Alrighty. Well, let's, as you said, let's get started. Um, so first and foremost, we had this idea because a lot of people have a really good effect in maybe sourcing individuals for new roles that they have, but actually selecting them is the hardest part and actually the most valuable part of getting the best people into your company. This webinar, we're obviously talking about the best salespeople, and there are common and proven frameworks in order to do that. And the great news is I've got with me here today, I've got Fredrik Mellander from Teamtailor as a partner of Sales for Startups. And he'll be talking and supporting us about how to take a lot of the theory and the frameworks into action by using a great piece of software in Teamtailor. So this really is like theory into practice. So yeah, delighted to have you here, Fredrik Mellander, and supporting me on stage today. Perhaps you could give a brief intro into your role and Teamtailor as well.
Absolutely. So I'm happy to be here as well and be a part of this on the stage with you as well, and hear your expertise in how to hire the best salespeople, and hopefully share some of my expertise in terms of recruitment industry and employer branding as a whole. So what I do at Teamtailor is I'm the head of partnerships, as you can read on the screen, which pretty much means I take care of all of our partnerships, anything from commercial partnerships, similar to this one with Sales for Startups, but also all of the technical partnerships, say assessment platforms, interview screening platforms, background checks, anything you will need in order to make sure you can streamline your process even further as a whole. And I've been doing it for quite a while now and getting quite good at it. I hope I can say, for at least for myself.
Yeah, for those who don't know, Fredrik and I started speaking about 18 months ago. So pleased to do this as many, as well as other initiatives as well. I've really liked Teamtailor, based out in Stockholm in Sweden. I first went to Sweden to back some years ago to help a little company called Klarna, which they're certainly not a little company anymore. So bigger than PayPal, but yeah, delighted to kick things off.
Yeah.
So here we are. Like, why are we here? Why are we talking about selection? Why does it matter to you guys to get this right? So for those who don't know, the average spent on wasted talent in the UK for SMEs, small and medium businesses, is £125,000. That's per year, and that's an average, unfortunately, of 5.7 million businesses that waste that amount of money. So that's a very scary statistic for me, is that that is the equivalent of a very senior role, or sometimes in most companies, 3 or 4 people's salaries that you're wasting every single year as an average across the whole ecosystem of the UK's company market. So the challenge is like, why is that problem of 125,000 spent by these companies on average? And for me, it comes back to the analysis that company founders are doing when wanting to hire potentially that new salesperson in their company. They're not necessarily looking at the goals and outcomes that they have for when they want to hire that individual or that number of individuals. Secondly, they're not really identifying the problems, the who, what, when of their company's problems. And then more importantly to me and to our clients is actually identifying the root causes of their problem. Because in sometimes hiring a salesperson might not actually be the solution to your core challenges. And that's why we do need to do this analysis. Then finally, you've got to weigh up those options that you've considered once you've understood the root cause. And then at that point, you have the luxury of thinking, okay, what's the kind of company ecosystem and machine that we're going to be building? And hence you look at the machine first, and then you select the people that correlate to that business model and that entity. So we're going to obviously talk about the first part of a selection engine, which we call and refer to the whole process as the 5S process. So first and foremost today, we're going to be covering the scorecard, why that's important, and Fredrik's going to teach us as to how to take that into practice, how to implement that into your company using Teamtailor. And secondly, we're going to talk about sourcing talent, how you attract and multiply the impact of those adverts and referrals, potentially for new candidates. And then thirdly, we're going to talk about selection. And that really is the key, as unfortunately for me, for all my sins as a recruiter, over 10 years ago, recruiting salespeople for a job and a profession, to actually the selection part, which is often neglected by many. And I certainly wasn't taught how to do it when I was a recruiter either. Then we're going to go on to talking about selling the opportunity. So this is in the final stages of the selection process, how you actually in effect close the deal, how you get that contract signed by that great A-team player that you want to join your company. And then, moving forward, we're not going to talk about it today, about starting and onboarding and ramping those people up to a proficient level. That's probably a topic in its own right. That's why we've graded out and not covering it today. But without further ado, Fredrik, I think we should kick off with the scorecard and lay down the groundwork.
Exactly. I think it's a pretty good starting point to touch upon. And I think let's start off within Teamtailor and the selection engine, sales engine that you have here in terms of the scorecards. And I think I'll leave this to you because I think you're more proficient in this kind of thing than I am.
Yeah, sure. So to talk through a little bit of the component parts here, like, why do we have a scorecard initially? Why is that important to our roles? First and foremost is that we need a scorecard so that we can create a fair and just process in which to select that great talent. The second thing is, as we've gone back and done the analysis on our company, we understand what kind of outcomes we're actually driving towards with that particular role. A lot of people will not necessarily think about, I'm going to hire, say, a business development manager or a VP of sales. But what are those 3 to 5 outcomes that person's actually going to focus on in, say, the next 12 months, the first year of their role? And hence, you can measure against that. You can then select against that. And that's where scorecards are really, really relevant to what we have today. So, you'll see here as well, Fredrik showing on screen here about, this is the selection interview, the first stage as well. So you can look at, all the stages in terms of having a regulated process that you can move towards as well. But unless you have a proper scorecard, you really can't get a just way of doing things. What's your feedback and experience on using scorecards, Fredrik, at Teamtailor and the roles that you've recruited for?
I think one of the biggest things is you need to understand who you're going to recruit before you start recruiting. I think a lot of people start recruiting and say they're going to find a salesperson, and they just broadly accept a salesperson as any other salesperson because they think every salesperson is alike, and they just think any person can fit the role. I think especially in early stage companies, especially sales companies, you need to be really frank with what kind of person you're looking for, what goals are they trying to achieve, what issues might they come up with, and really start building the foundation before you understand who you're going to hire. Because your first intention, idea might be that we're going to hire a salesperson like this, but once you start digging into your company, your role and everything, you might understand that it's more like this kind of salesperson that we're going to hire. And that's the definition of why you need a scorecard. So once you've done that, you can set up a process to really follow through and really get that going. And that's pretty much what we're showing here. Once you've done that decision, once you've mapped out what kind of role, what kind of criteria, what kind of profile, what should they do, what problems, what goals do we want to achieve with this person, how much money should this person generate, and that kind of stuff, then you can go into the next kind of things. I think a lot of sales companies only think money-wise. They only think this person should generate X amount of budget per month. They should generate 100,000 euros per year. That's their quota, or 100,000 euros per month. But they don't only think about what kind of criteria, what kind of person, what kind of role. And I think that's probably the thing you should start off with. And especially when you're trying to build a huge sales organization, what kind of salespeople are you trying to look for? What kind of role, what kind of opportunities, and what kind of personality traits do they have?
Yeah, certainly. I think also a scorecard resembles the opportunity to kind of set the standard within your own company. We've obviously talked about goals and objectives, but there are other parts with regards to values and standards and experience, which is relevant as well. So yeah, I think it's a really, really important point is that then you can design the process that we gave a little bit of a preview here. So you might start on the left-hand side here in Google Docs or a Word doc where you flesh out, what are those key outcomes. You can see here from, you might have a revenue target, of say 7 million annual recurring, but then it's like, okay, where's that going to come from? What contributory role or impact will this role have on that target? And then you could flesh down those objectives in terms of, say, grow the revenue from this existing product base, to hire a team, with these types of roles. So it's very clear what that role is going to have. So in effect, if you were to show it to your board investors, you can really justify why you're recruiting for that role, and all the fees and time associated to recruiting that role as well can be clearly articulated. And then what you're able to do by doing that kind of groundwork is, set your standard, what's almost your non-negotiables, and then you can take that intelligence into somewhere like Teamtailor, where you can actually measure against those outcomes during the process.
Because in reality, that's where it all starts. Before you start publishing the job posting, you need to understand what kind of person this is. You do this prior to even publishing the job, or publishing the job on Indeed or wherever you publish it, or write the actual job advertisement, because in order for you to write the job advertisement, you need to know who you're going to hire. So the first thing you do is you do your homework to understand what kind of person is this, what kind of person am I looking for, what's his background, what can he bring, what has he done, what does he not do, for you to be able to build a foundation on which you're going to recruit.
Yeah, I think sometimes people think of scorecards as like those big assessment centers where you just have like 0 to 9, and on the day, if you've got 3 panel interviewers, how would they score that person? That's not really what we're referring to. That is obviously relevant in terms of how you measure the candidate's applicability throughout the process, but it's not necessarily the reason and the raison d'etre here we're talking about with the scorecard. Cool. Okay. So on to sourcing then. So sourcing talent, a major point. There's, as you know, there's so many means to do this, Fredrik. Like whether it's using recruiters, whether it's using your referral network, whether it's using competitions or hackathons if they're developers or product managers. Some of those we've even seen in sales as well. We've run pitch competitions as well for people where they're doing a kind of video interview pitch as well around your product or a similar product that's relevant. So there are lots of different means, but ultimately with the end goal of now we know who we're hiring and how we're going to measure them in the process, and we can set that up as we've seen briefly in Teamtailor, to actually how do we get this great influx of candidates into our pipeline, in which then we can take them through the selection process, Fredrik, and it'd probably be a good point to move forward into some of the ways that the platform enables us to do this at scale and consistently as well.
Exactly. And when you look at this, when you look in terms of sourcing talents, I think you need to break it down into 3 different categories. First off, you need to reach the candidates wherever they are. And how you do that is very dependent on which kind of company you are, your budget and everything else. But there are a lot of different ways of doing that. That could be through traditional advertising, through some of these job boards you can see on screen. That could be through recruiting companies. That could be through referral networks. That could be through marketing campaigns. That could be through student fairs. That could be through universities. There are a lot of different ways for you to reach these people, but in order for you to understand which place is the best place for you to reach these people, you need to do your homework. So you need to build a scorecard to understand, okay, what kind of person am I looking at? Where does that person exist? Okay, now I'll do my targeting activities. If you're trying to look for one profile, it could be really good to find on Indeed, but the other one is not good at all to find on Indeed. So if you spend a lot of money posting the second role on Indeed, just a waste of money, which means you just end up wasting a lot of time and wasting a lot of money trying to find a different role. So you need to do your homework. You need to understand where does this person exist in terms of so I can reach them in order to be able to catch their interest. The second part of that, of course, is the attraction part. So you need to make sure that once this person has found your company, you need to make sure that they see that the grass is greener on this side of the edge. So this is just one of the easy, simple career site that I threw together. But as a whole, you need to have a career site, because this is where people end up to do the research about your company. You need to understand some of the values that they're looking for, some of the benefits that they're looking for. And of course, it's very different for every single person, geographically, age-wise, and seniority level-wise. But on average, people want to know certain things. They want to know who my co-worker is going to be, what's my perks and benefits, what's my salary or what expectation. Is it going to be a remote first? Is it going to be an hour commute? What's the culture like? What's the vision like? What's the ambition? What's our values at this company? Certain things you need to take off in order for you to leave your current comfort zone at your current employment to be able to leave for the next opportunity. And based off this research that we can see, this is something that they do on the career site. Any like outreach activity that you do pretty much ends up on the career site. So you can pretty much see it as the landing strip, or like the airport of your recruitment activities, because they'll always land on your career site. So this is the opportunity for you to attract them, to really talk to a salesperson, make sure that they know, okay, why should I work in sales here instead of there or there or there? What are our values? What are our value proposition that we can offer you that someone else can't? And stuff like that. So you really give an opportunity for them to have that. And the second part, or the third part rather, is the conversion part. Once you've reached these people wherever they are, once they found your company and done their own research and they're interested in your company, you need to make sure that it's easier for them to take that final step in actually building a relationship with you. And that could be anything from just like making it easier for you to have your contact info out on your webpage so they can give you a call or a text message, giving your email info. That could be making it easier for them to apply using LinkedIn, Facebook. That could be applying from their phone, from their desktop. That could be just writing a chat message, anything that you can do in order to make it easier for them to convert. This is something that salespeople know quite well in terms of marketing. They will want to know that their leads that they're going to sell to have the easiest way for them to generate to become an actual lead. And you need to do the same thing for salespeople. Or for hiring. You need to make it easy to convert that visitor and that person into an actual applicant and an actual relationship with that company. So there's 3 different layers of doing that. What we do at Teamtailor, of course, we help a lot with the attraction parts. We help a lot with the building the career site. We make it easy for people to apply. We make it easy for people to build a page that really represents their brand, their culture, their values, and their benefits. But also additions like that, like the advertising segment that comes to Teamtailor. So all jobs will always be published on the biggest job boards. We can always purchase the job boards if you want to have details into that. There's a referral network that you can activate on Teamtailor. So you can have every single employee work at your company can share their jobs. All the jobs advertisements are made to be able to link, to be able to have global reach. So they always have a unique job URL description. They look good when you share them on LinkedIn or Facebook or wherever social media you share them on. You can activate internal and external recruiters, anything for you to be able to reach the people that you have, and then to go through the entire journey as a whole.
Yeah, I like that. I found that career sites in times gone by were quite used by bigger companies, and the smaller player, i.e. the SME market that we serve, they can really get access to those micro sites that in effect that we're showcased today as well, that Fredrik just showed. And I think it's great that we now have that functionality to quickly upload. One of the big features I like that you may have seen up the top there with the San Francisco Bay Bridge was the connect feature. We get a lot of sales professionals connecting with sales startups, for example, that there's no job opening right here, right now, but they connect, which in effect it's like they join a newsletter is another way to think of it as well. So we've now got this massive candidate pool of people that when a role goes live, we can review their profiles, or even easier, we could send out a bulk email and say that this job's going live, do you know anyone that would be relevant to it? And we've had a very good success rate from those emails. About 15 to 20% of people are actually coming back and applying to the role that we've just then launched with obviously a hyperlink to our site as well. So the other one that I've used quite intelligently for the attract piece that Fredrik mentioned was within the space there's also a trackable, shareable link. So what you can do is, if you do have partners, like we're obviously on the line today with Teamtailor, but you might have other partners, agencies you might work with, but you could, for example, put it onto their newsletter. So we've used that with like Sales Impact Academy, with Tech London Advocates, and other people that have good distribution lists of thousands of people, and they have latest jobs. You may be able to get on somewhere like Sifted, as an example, in the tech news in Europe. So if you're able to get into those realms, whether it's just through partners or just through a bit of fortune and proactivity, you can really increase your candidate pool that are coming in. So yeah, it's a really nice feature that I know has been recently added, but I've really used it quite cleverly as well. So as a small company, you need to think of these collection of different tactics in order to get the end result, which is obviously that great candidate pool. It's not one thing that does it all. It's not one job board, one link, one thing that does it all, but it's the collective and the combination of those tactics that enable you to get a great reach and obviously attract, and then obviously converting into applications for the role.
And as cheesy as it may sound, the quote, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different result, really applies to recruiting, because you have to be quite agile. You have to be quite smart on how you reach people, how you attract people. You need to do that quite differently sometimes for certain roles. Once you've narrowed down the formula, you figured it out. Of course, you can continue doing the same thing, but similar every single time. But it all starts with, you need to understand who you're going to hire. Then you need to understand, where am I going to reach this person and how I'm going to reach this person, and do your efforts to reach that person. Once that person has been reached, you need to make sure that that person is attracted to your company. And once they're attracted, you make it easier for them to take the next step and actually applying for your jobs, or building a network, or connecting with you in one way or another, which means you can start building that relationship and actually getting an application into the process. So you have to think those 4 stages. Understand first what kind of person, make the scorecard, understand what kind of a role, how do I reach them, where do I reach them, when do I start reaching them, how do I attract them, how do I convert them. And once you have the applications into Teamtailor, or then you of course do the selection process, in terms of, you need to start selecting who you're going to hire.
Yeah, no, it's as we go on, I was just thinking how, looking at the interface now in Teamtailor from when I first saw it 18 months ago, there's just continual additions, the shareable links, the job ad platform, new ad free platforms as well. It's just, you guys are clearly, always innovating, which I love about you guys. And it's just so much, as hiring changes, the attraction changes, the platforms are going to change, but obviously Teamtailor have created that framework that enables you to take advantage of those latest trends that are in the marketplace. So on to selecting the talent. So this is the real key part as well, and what we'll spend a fair amount of time on today, because this is the challenging part for most companies. So I just wanted to outline this first before we go into the demo part, Fredrik, is that for me, in terms of, I've just given the example of a CRO, it's probably one of the most technical roles that you could hire. So probably there will be a slimmed down version of this in terms of if you were hiring, say, an account executive or business development manager or sales development representative. But to give you an idea, is you certainly want to have, the core parts, which is around screening, the background, using an assessment of some sort, having that cultural interview with leadership, and then holding a reference, and then you obviously make a decision as a team. Some of these can be done online, and they're not necessarily candidate stages, so you wouldn't necessarily say to the candidate, oh, by the way, we're going to go through a 5-stage process. This could actually be, say, a 3-stage process, because a lot of that work will be done internally. So, but what this platform enables you to do is to actually take a lot of the nuanced information that you may have and conversations between colleagues, and actually have that in a clear, transparent place in terms of the platform, to measure those outcomes, measure those things of the candidate. So it is fair, it's just, and you do attract, as well as convert, diverse talent pool as well, because otherwise your biases are very prevalent. I mean, even on the the sourcing one, when I released a recent role for CRO, one of our specialists we've got a recruiting and selection arm in talent for startups, but Dan was telling me that there's gender biases on job adverts now as well. So you've got to be very clear on that you're not doing a male dominated kind of prose in your job advert. And it's the same with selection, is that you can't just think, oh, that person's just like me, so I should hire them. You need to have more structured approach to doing that. So the good thing about this process that I've learned over the last 10 years is that it kind of layers each of them. So, the screening and the background interview actually connect to the reference interview. And the biggest difference maybe for some people when you watch this is that the reference interview actually comes before the decision. Now, that's sometimes contrary to a lot of people's belief, and they would say, well, don't we just take references after we've offered the role? And for me, that's actually the wrong strategy to take, because you want to make an offer based on sound judgment. And sound judgment often is dealt by the input of those great references. You may not be able to take the reference for their current hiring manager or their current boss, but typically you're hiring people that have had a job role before. They've got other referees that you can speak to. They've got previous colleagues, they've got previous clients, previous bosses that may have moved away from the company that you can reference. So you may only be waiting on one or two references at the point of decision, and therefore you're at the sort of 80% completion rate in the hiring exercise, rather than being, let's kind of be at zero and let's take a chance, and if the references don't work out, then we've got nowhere to go, because you're almost contractually obliged at that point, because you've sent out that offer letter and the contract to the employee. The other nuance to this is that a person that doesn't necessarily take the references before the offer, the referees will often think that the reference is just a tick box exercise, because they'll just say, the offer will be upstanding with 2 suitable references. So the referee gets that request for that reference call, and they just think all I've got to say is when they joined the company, what their job role was, that they didn't get sacked or fired for any wrong reason or anything like that. So, but actually what we're saying is that there is a little bit more color to that as well. And the same with the background interview as well. It's really, really important that you actually look and take a systematic way to breaking down people's job roles previously as well. So looking at what were some of their successes, what were some of their low points, who were they working with, what were some of their learns during that time, what were they hired to do when they got that role. That's really important as well, is that you often see sometimes a deviation of people's career, and you can also match that to their experience as well and their skill set, because their own skill set will lead them a certain way, and they'll get job roles in a different domain, but actually when you look at the original role they were hired to do, it's very different from the second role they did at the same company. And that may be a good thing for you as a potential hiring manager, and obviously as a new employee, but it also could be the wrong thing for you as well. So really, really important there. Fredrik, I don't know if you've got anything to add to that you've observed from your time at Teamtailor as well.
No, I think the selection process, of course, is difficult, and of course, there's a lot of tools that can help you do this. There are, like, if you're really uncertain about some of these things, there are great assessment tools that have built-in sales processes, so like good sales criteria based off the criteria so you set up for when you build the scorecards. You can just assess them according to this, and you will generate an average score. And there are things that can help you with these referral processes, and there are ways you can do that if you're uncertain about doing it, because recruiting isn't as easy as it's always made sound. like, you still have to figure out when you have a lot of people in your talent pool, you have to make sure that they're selling themselves to you. So you need to be quite like harsh in the beginning to understand, okay, they are like, salespeople are usually really hard to hire because salespeople are really good at selling themselves. So the salespeople will say that they're the best, they're the smartest, they're the charmiest, they're the best, whatever. And you have to be able to see through that. So especially with salespeople, it's quite different, and that's why using tools and using a really good structured framework allows you to see past a lot of that bias and see past some of that sales charm that some salespeople tend to have, which usually can be quite destructive, quite bad for a company. So having a clear process, having clear defined processes in terms of questions, what's to be asked, and if you can't do that on your own, if you don't want to do that on your own, like get help from assessment solution or some other solution or some other technical solution that's integrated to the ATS that allows you to do that, because there are platforms that allow you to do some of these things as well. So you can remove some of the things that you might not be as good at, but still have a really solid recruiting process in terms of selecting candidates. But if you go into Teamtailor and just understand how Teamtailor helps here, pretty much what we see here is the general that in Teamtailor, you will have a clear overview of where are candidates in the recruiting process. How many candidates are in the inbox? How many candidates are we currently reviewing? How many candidates are we doing a phone screening with a background check, with a background interview? Once you've reviewed them, you'll be able to see their entire profile next to them. They would see everything in one place. And you will also be able to do the base of the background screening. You'll be able to see, okay, now I have the background interview. I'm going to go through and leave feedback. So these are the instructions. So once I'm doing this with the candidate, I'll then see, okay, I need to think about this. I need to do this. Then these are the questions I need to ask. I need to objectively think about the answers to them as well, because they're probably going to sugarcoat them a bit. Because salespeople tend to sugarcoat things quite a lot. They tend to be the best, the strongest, the wisest, the smartest, the prettiest of the bunch. So you need to be able to have a really objective view as well, and then be able to score them based on the profile and criteria that you set up when you started to hiring the role. So you need to understand, who am I hiring, what am I hiring, and if you need help, ask for help or look for solutions that can help you with this if you're not unable to set this kind of stuff up yourself, or reach out to James or someone who can help you set up these things for the roles you can hire a multitude of. Of course, it's not time efficient to do this for one individual role if you can only hire one person, if you don't have the skills to do it on your own. But if you're hiring 15 account managers over the next year, it's definitely worth doing this and taking some time out of your week and your day and your months to set up a process for this, so you actually make sure that your processes are hired better and like properly.
Yeah, I would add to that as well that I've actually learned a lot by hiring different roles from salespeople and using that framework, because actually every time you hire, you learn something about yourself, but about your process, and therefore you can just slightly optimize it for the next role. So you might think, I'm hiring a product or a marketing role, and therefore salespeople, that this wouldn't be relevant. But then maybe if you just change the detail within almost the observation, you actually could apply that to salespeople as well. And that's where a lot of my thinkings come from, is that, I hired for our company a head of marketing recently in Alex Cook, and actually by doing that process, now going to a new CRO recruitment for my company, as we're in quite an expansive growth period, I can then take a lot of those smarts that we had, so around psychometric testing, and adding that to the process. And that's where Teamtailor really supports in terms of the activity and the messages. Everything is in one place. So you can bring in those attachments. You can speak to the candidates as well when you're in that selection process, to register everything in one place, which is fantastic, because similar to those who know Asana as well, when you can kind of reply on tasks and so forth, and it's all stored in one place. It's the same as CRM as well. So yeah, really, really helpful. And I think that, my mentor always said to me, when emotions go up, intellect goes down. And when you think about hiring, you do need to make an objective based process, because you can let your emotion be part of your decision making, because we are human ultimately, and we've got to work with these individuals. But that should be at the latter part of the process, when you've understood that this person is definitely capable of fulfilling, the role requirements. They have the right culture, the right attitudes. They pass the assessment. Now we can bring in, like you said, our scoring, our star review as a team review, and get people to vote on that, because that may be a bit of a subjective statement, but we've already recognized as a team, as a hiring team, this person can do the role. They are in line with our company culture. They've got the experience and skills that are requisite for this role. So now we can say, 1 to 5 on a star rating between 2 or 3 of us, in the hiring team. That's not a big problem. because really we're looking at marginal gains, but that could obviously affect us. But we know without a shadow of doubt that we're ready to rock and roll.
Yeah. So like you can easily break it down in the early stages of the recruiting process. Once you've done the screening and once you have, for example, you have 80 candidates that have applied for your job, your ambition with that is to narrow that down to as few as possible that you can see definitely will be a good fit for and can actually do the job. So in that stage of the recruiting process, they need to impress you. They need to make sure that they impress you enough that they go forward and say to be able to go forward in the recruiting process. And that flips on its head because all of a sudden, which is a pretty good segue into the next thing, which is the selection and selling the opportunity, because that flips on its head. Because at a certain stage, when you have 5 candidates you're selecting between that you think all 5 of these people will be probably a good fit for the company, then how will you make sure that they actually pick your company to work for? Because if you go through this hiring process and you select 5 people and none of them pick the job, then you waste a lot of time, a lot of money, and a lot of effort. And you still need to be really good at selling the opportunity as well. But I'll hand this over to you, James.
Yeah, I think, like Fredrik said earlier about reach, attract, convert, we are in the conversion phase of the hiring process right now. Now we've got potentially a competitive candidate or someone that has alternatives, even if that's just stay put. That's also something that you've got to take into account, that in this environment that we're in right now, there'll be people that just will want to stay put because they won't be on, worry about probation periods. They won't have a sort of 1 week notice period if things don't go their way, because at the moment they might be on a 3-month notice period. So even if things don't go quite right, they're going to be 3 months of salary and then they'll be able to find a new position. So now it's about convincing that person that you are the right person and the right company for them to join. And it's also an excellent exercise to assimilate a lot of the knowledge and notes you've taken throughout the process. This could be, say, 6 to 8 weeks in time frame as an example for a senior role. Junior role, probably anywhere between sort of 3 to 6 weeks. But within that time frame, you've got to know the candidates quite a lot, and you've got to know maybe there's some of their interests, maybe some of their family that they may have mentioned. And with that as well, we like to talk about the 5 F's in order to assimilate this information. So when you're thinking about that potential offer, or got to the point of the reference interview and looking at, okay, we've got to make a decision potentially on this individual. Think about, is the role a fit for them? In terms of what they actually really want the role and why they're looking to move and what's going to be right for them. Is this role and company a good fit for them? And, sort of put out a couple of bullet points as well within your Teamtailor notes. So, you've recorded that as a team. And then think about the family as well. Does the role involve travel? Does it mean long hours? Does it mean something that it could be a global or European-wide role, which means they might have to go to Stockholm, for example. They might have to go to, Oslo, as an example. They might have to go to France or Spain. If they've got a young family and they've got maybe a 6-month baby, that might be quite a big challenge for them, as they know that that's a really important time of their own life and their tenure, both with their partner as well as their newborn child. So that's really important to recognize. Are they getting recently married as well? What sort of phase are they in there, and what does that mean for them in terms of maybe stability, longevity, building being part of a culture that is expanding. Freedom as well is a big factor. So that ability to be the master of their own destiny or the queen of their own destiny, is pretty important that they have that freedom. A lot of people, this will be a massive factor. So there's a weighting in these 5 F's. It's not like necessarily equal amongst all. You'll find that some are like sort of 60-70% weighting on one and maybe 10 on the others. Some may not even rank all of these 5 factors. One of them might be completely irrelevant. It may be fortune, i.e. the finance, the package, the incentives that are not as relevant. It may be just, if you pay me market rate, I'm absolutely fine with that because it hits all the other 4 F's, in abundance. And then the final one is fun. Like ultimately, we want to create environments for new employees that are fun, but also how does the candidate think about fun. What does fun mean to them? What does enjoyment mean to them? What is a great working environment for that individual? How do they like to be managed? What initiatives, what are some of those fun moments that they had? If it was High Flyers Club, what were some of those activities that they like to do? What do they do at the weekends? Do they play rugby? Do they play tennis? Do they play hockey? What are those other things that are important to them? And hence an understanding of that means that you can then tailor your positioning of your potential offer to join the company with this almost kind of framework of the 5 Fs. And on the right hand side, you can see here of an excerpt from one of our own internal scorecards in that we use to, or the questions on that stage, to look at just assimilating that decision. We put these 5 Fs into the upside and the downsides as well. So you may have someone, for example, that may be requiring a greater package, and that may be a downside for your company, but actually the other sides might, overweight that as well in terms of the impact they may have. So yeah, you want to bring everything together at this point and then be able to submit that offer, normally these days via kind of Zoom or telephone, to the candidate in terms of the offer, and then get initial verbal acceptance on that offer. But if you don't, it's a bit like preparing for a sales pitch. If you don't, hit the key notes right with that new candidate, then that offer will not be as attractive as maybe a competing offer, or at least the stay put. What are your thoughts, Fredrik?
But it's quite clear. Like, unfortunately, with COVID, a lot of people have been made redundant. But when you still look at the global job market, most people are still employed, and the best salespeople in this scenario are still probably employed by somewhere else. So in order for you to acquire this salesperson and make sure that salesperson jumps ship from that company is currently at to your company, you need to make sure that the grass is greener on your side, and you need to be able to sell the opportunity, make sure that he ticks all the boxes he's looking for, and that you tick all the boxes you're looking for. So the first part of the selection process is you making sure that this person fits all the criteria that you're looking for, and the second part of the recruiting process is him making sure that she is making sure that they pick the selection that they're looking for. Okay, they have all the criteria that I'm looking for. And this is also something that candidates tend to look at prior to even applying for the jobs, which is really good while you do this on the career side as well, because selling the opportunity starts way before before they even submitted their application. When they're first doing research about your company, they will start looking at some of these things. And if they don't see some of these 5 Fs when they're looking at your career site, they might not even apply for your job. So it's a huge opportunity for you to do a lot in terms of attraction prior to even getting the application as well, which is something you have to consider. And it has to be the same. So you can't have one thing on your career site and the different thing when you're talking to candidates. That will be, it has to be like transparent, it has to be truthful, which is really, really, really key.
Completely agree with that. One feature that we found based on candidate feedback that's been really useful about Teamtailor is what they call kind of the Micropitch as well. So the top of your job advert, you'll have kind of one sentence, whatever it is, about 140 characters, which you can then, as you can see on our current one at the moment, is that from feedback from candidates, they said that they love the idea of working with multiple B2B tech startups and helping them grow predictable revenue. So that was a massive candidate attraction feature in terms of the freedom and also the fit, if we're to use this framework as well. And for many, the fun, which is for a lot of people is the variety as well. And sometimes in tech startups, the uncertainty as well, that not everything's going to be defined. Everything may be a little bit, lucid in some ways, that you go into companies and you think, wow, there's a lot to do here. But the people that we hire, they love that slight uncertainty and that challenge, that adventure. You can see where that is, very much pointing towards the fun. So that's been, like Fredrik said, at the early stage, even when they're maybe applying for that role, first and foremost, they'll think, I remember when you said about how many companies you work with per year, and they will kind of repeat that throughout the process, and then you can say, you can play that back to them in terms of in their words and their understanding why I think this is a great role, for you, and we would love to have you on board. And then, they've internalized that knowledge throughout the process. They've read it multiple times, they've heard it multiple times, and now they're hearing it maybe in a summary statement when you're about to submit that offer, or at the point of submitting that offer.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Let's move forward then. So in terms of what we've covered today, we've obviously covered the importance of the scorecard, how you set that up, how you take it from kind of a doc into your actual hiring process using Teamtailor. We've talked about the varieties of sourcing talent, whether that's through partners, whether that's through email, through job boards, and how you aggregate a lot of that knowledge into one place within the Teamtailor platform. We talked about selecting talent, so not only creating the right stages for selection, but the scorecards within that, so you have a structured and repeatable process within each, say, the background interview into the assessment center, so you can score people in an objective and fair manner rather than, you know, being open to biases and discrimination. Then finally, we talk about selling the opportunity. This is the closing point, you know, for all of us. So for those that you know, want to actually get that best candidate, it's important to sell the opportunities using the 5 Fs that we've used today. And you can use Teamtailor and the questions within that stage just to make sure that you cover all the bases in that final stage of the process. But from that, it's a pause from me, and, you know, for those that may be interested in looking at the starting, onboarding, and ramping of salespeople, yeah, that's definitely a topic for another day, and perhaps that's something, Fredrik, we could look at in the future for those people that have got that candidate. But what does that first 90 or 180 days look like?
Definitely, definitely.
Mm,
So in terms
cool.
of wrapping it up, I think like what we've covered and what's important is I think what we got covered pretty much what James said is, first of all, you need to understand who you're going to hire. You need to map out what that person is going to do, who they are, what their role is, and what their vision is, and what the goal is going to be in order for you to be able to start actually trying to understand this before you start hiring someone. And don't do this when it's urgent for you to hire someone, so you need to stress hire someone. It's better for you to have like start this process way before you need to hire someone, so you have this in process, and you can actually have someone who has like time to take some time off or start having a slow ramp up time. It's never good for you to have someone that you need, like if you don't fill this role within 3 months, you're going to be fucked. Like, excuse my French, but you don't want to be in that situation, especially in early stages, especially with different roles. And when it comes to that, then you need to understand, once you found that out who you're going to hire, you need to understand, okay, how do I reach this person? Where do I reach this person? Is it through our mutual network? Is it through advertising? Is it through marketing? Is it through universities, through whatever, whatnot? And once you've done that, once you've reached these people, and once they come to your page, you need to make sure that you attract them. You need to be able to sell your workplace and your benefits and your values and your company to this person, because most likely, it's just statistically, he's probably currently, or he or she is currently employed somewhere else, which means you need to make sure that that grass is greener on the other side, and what you highlight in your company and your values and your benefits is better. And oftentimes it's soft values. Like if we look at what millennials, who are the biggest workforce right now, they look for soft values. So that's like, they want to have engaging colleagues and co-workers. They want to have engaging tasks at work. Like, usually it doesn't have to be monetary things, because you can't compete with Facebook or Google that pays 10 times your salaries. So instead of trying to push for that, try to push the things that makes your company unique, and your culture and your values, and the work that they can do instead. Once these people are interested, you need to make it super easy for them to take that final step in actually converting into an actual application. Make it easier for them to apply on any device, through social media, through anything else. Just make it easier for them to take that final step, or even make it easier for them to just like give out your hand, so they can just take it, instead of them having to climb up the hill for them to apply for the job. In terms of that next step, you need to make sure the selection process, and once you've done the homework on kind of person you want, it's quite easier for you to just follow the framework of the kind of people you're trying to hire. Get help from assessment solutions, from like psychometric tests, background checks, reference check solutions. If you can't do that on your own, get help from someone who can help you build that framework, so you can just follow that framework. Because as soon as you start steering away and start letting emotions and starts to getting charmed, you're probably likely to make an incorrect hire. And once you've narrowed that down to a couple of people that you feel like, okay, these are the 5 people that we're interested in, you need to turn it all around and really say, hey, I want you to work at this company, and you need to make sure that they take all their 5 Fs, to make sure that they feel like this is a fun, engaging workplace. They feel like this is something where they want to work. They like ticks all of their boxes in general. And I think that's the way you will build a attractive or an effective sales process or sales
Yeah.
process.
Yeah, I mean, to build on Fredrik's comments, like it's not easy, right? Recruiting the best salespeople is not easy, and you need to have a strategy for selecting, firstly, even launching the right roles, as we talked about at the first part of this session. You've got to actually understand that you are hiring the right role. I hear so many CEOs being like, I just need a BDM, I just need an AE, I need a SDR, or I need a VP of sales. How do you know that? What is the logic and the data that you're using in order to come up with that judgment? So you do need to understand that first and foremost. And that's often what we help CEOs really get to the bottom of is, what is the right path? What is the best course of action as well going forward? And then, as we talked about, you've got to set yourself up to win with the scorecard, because you can understand how you can measure that against, outcomes, and team members involved in the hiring process, maybe coming later in the process in terms of their involvement. They understand what needs to be done in order to get a successful person to the company as well. And then finally, it is around the selection process. I mean, I certainly wasn't taught this when I was recruiting. I've recruited over 100 people in my career, and it's been very challenging to actually learn about selection, because it's not a skill that we are taught, even in companies, even when we're hiring lots and lots of people. It's a lot about the sourcing and often quite a biased way of recruiting. But if we can leverage great technology like Teamtailor, we can make it a fair and just process. We can actually get the best salespeople to our company, and then ultimately we can get the results that we often want, which is an increase, in revenue, in profit, in market share, etc. So, yeah, really, really enjoyed today's session, and thanks, Fredrik, for helping us with that ultimate aim of putting theory into practice today, with regards to a great hiring process.
Yeah, thank you so much for having a good chat. Hope there was like interesting for everyone else who attended. And if there's anything else, just feel free to reach out to us on LinkedIn or anything else. But we'll also summarize this following up. So hopefully we're good, and we'll talk soon.
Cool. Thanks a lot, Fredrik. Thanks for coming today. Cheers. Bye-bye now.